And for today's Business Matters, Meta has agreed to settle with President Trump over suspending his accounts after January 6, 2021. Meta spokesperson Andy Stone confirmed the terms, which is a $25 million payment from the company, with $22 million going toward a fund for Trump's presidential library. The balance will go to legal fees and other plaintiffs in the case. Meta spokesperson said the settlement does not require Meta to admit wrongdoing. Meta will be the latest corporation to settle litigation with Trump. ABC News agreed last month to pay $15 million over inaccurate statements made on air about the president. CEO Mark Zuckerberg has been trying to reconcile with Trump since his election. He visited the president's private Florida club in November and was among a number of tech leaders at his inauguration. Meta also donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural committee. Shifting and bundling to stay competitive. Comcast announced that it is shifting its focus to mobile business. And this comes after the cable giant reported a loss of nearly 140,000 residential broadcast customers in the fourth quarter. The company noted increased competition from Verizon and T-Mobile. The news of the loss overshadowed Comcast's upbeat results and $15 billion share buyback program. Comcast President Mike Cavanaugh said the company plans to introduce new pricing packages in the coming months that bundle wireless and internet. And the Department of Justice has sued to block a $14 billion acquisition deal. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is trying to merge with networking gear maker Juniper Networks. The complaint says the DOJ is arguing this would stifle competition. It says it would lead to only two companies, Cisco Systems and Hewlett, controlling more than 70% of the U.S. market for networking equipment. In a joint statement, the companies said that they would defend the deal. They argue the acquisition will bring together two complementary networking offerings to better compete globally. And this summer, some Texans can cruise with no one behind the wheel. During Tesla's latest earnings call, CEO Elon Musk said the company expects to launch thousands of unsupervised self-driving models in Austin starting in June. Several other cities are scheduled to be rolled out by the end of the year. Musk also said Tesla intends to speed up production of its Optimus humanoid robots and hopes to create thousands this year. As for Tesla's latest earnings, when compared to estimates, fourth quarter revenue fell, and so did the profit margin from vehicle sales. Now, it's a rarity for Tesla. The Elon Musk-led automaker missed its earnings estimate for the last quarter for 2024 amid weak sales and revenue. The automaker had already said it had its first annual sales drop in its history last year, but the company's quarterly revenue was about $1.5 billion less than expected. The earnings miss comes as Tesla faces increased competition from other electric vehicle makers in the US, China as well, and of course Europe. Tesla did not release a sales target for 2025, but did say it expects sales to rebound. Meanwhile, a rise in Chinese-made electric vehicles in Britain sparks fears over privacy. A survey found older drivers are concerned about invasive data gathering and poor quality. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more from London.
New data finds that older drivers in Britain are worried about spying amid the rise in Chinese electric vehicle or EV sales in the UK. The concern is over potentially invasive data gathering as Chinese companies such as BYD, WGM and Omoda gain ground in the British market. The survey of nearly 4,000 people and commissioned by online vehicle marketplace AutoTrader found 41% of people aged 55 and over have fears over data security and privacy risks. Meanwhile, 43% of respondents in the same group said they mistrust the quality of the goods. An AutoTrader report forecast that Chinese companies could hold a share of up to 25% of the UK's new EV market by 2030, the date when the UK government has promised to ban the sale of new gas and diesel cars. More than 400,000 Chinese EVs could be on the road by then. Chinese brands have come under increasing scrutiny in recent months. The United States, the European Union and Canada have each imposed heavy tariffs upon them. They accuse China of unfair market practices by subsidizing EV companies to underprice Western manufacturers. That said, Britain remains an attractive market for China because it has chosen not to impose tariffs. But the issues go beyond market competition. Last year, the president of the Institute of the Motor Industry, an international body, told British politicians that electric vehicles could be an effective Trojan horse at the Chinese Communist Party's disposal. Technology embedded in the vehicles could be used to harvest huge amounts of data, including video footage, audio recordings, and location data of drivers. At the time, former head of the UK's Secret Intelligence Service, Richard Dearlove, also warned against government leaders driving the Chinese-made cars. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Nissan Motor is trying to slash more than $2.5 billion of its costs globally. One way it's doing that is by offering buyouts and cutting back shifts. The Japanese car maker will offer separation packages to workers at its vehicle assembly plants in Smyrna, Deckard, Tennessee, and Canton, Mississippi. The company also plans to cut one of two shifts at two of the plants for two of its vehicles, starting in April, the Rogue sports utility vehicle in Smyrna, and starting in September for its Altima sedan in Canton. China experts say the Trump administration's foreign aid freeze is crippling America's ability to deal with China on all fronts. Here's more.
This broad freeze hobbles America at a moment when we are in the battle of the century.
At a Senate hearing Thursday, China expert Melanie Hart criticized the Trump administration's freeze on mostly all new foreign aid. Secretary of State Marco Rubio started the pause Friday, though he added exceptions for programs providing food, shelter, and medical assistance. President Trump ordered a 90-day suspension of foreign aid to determine whether current programs are aligned with his policy agenda.
It not just kneecaps us in human rights, in protecting Taiwan, in resisting cyber attacks, it also undercuts our ability to outbid Beijing in ports and telecom infrastructure.
The freeze is impacting the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Over the past few years, it successfully helped U.S. companies outbid Chinese firms in global infrastructure projects. Foreign military financing for Taiwan, over $1 billion, frozen. Human rights organizations, some frozen, some shutting down operations. Cyber assistance, frozen.
We are giving Beijing a blank check to commit cyber attacks against some of our partner nations. States CDP, the Cyberspace Digital Connectivity and Related Technology Fund, provides rapid foreign assistance to small countries that are being targeted with Chinese and Russian cyber attacks. That's turned off.
Hart says the longer the freeze goes on, the harder it'll be to regain the ground the U.S. is losing to Beijing, as Beijing continues its malign operations.
Proxy organizations obscure ties to the CCP while they buy media companies. Cyber units employ illegal cyber espionage and hacking operations, and Chinese agents coerce American citizens into promoting Beijing's interests by threatening their family.
China expert Jennifer Lin says these operations are massive in scope and unusually aggressive. The budget for these operations is said to exceed the budget of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Next, win back customers in Britain, build a digital presence in the U.S., and scale back in China. That's the strategy Mulberry Group CEO laid out to turn around the struggling handbag maker. Mulberry said it will focus on its British heritage, appeal to regain customers it had neglected, while focusing on expansion in Asia Pacific. The turnaround plan includes shutting down non-performing stores in China and moving marketing budgets away from Asia Pacific into the UK and US. Luxury brands have been struggling globally with the shrinking customer base. Prolonged economic weakness in China has further dragged down margins. And the economy in Europe has been slowing down over the past year, with industrial productivity showing a decline. Some industry leaders are calling for a shift in EU policies to be more like those in the United States. Members of the European Parliament have also called for an end to the green agenda. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez reports from Brussels.
Some economists in Europe and fiscal lawyers have reported a movement of businesses and wealthy financiers from Europe to the United States. Germany's economy is slowing down and prepares for another year of recession in 2025. Meanwhile, France faces a similar struggle, with the new businesses targeted taxes likely to be approved. Following the first days of Trump's presidency in January, EU leaders have called for a more competitive Europe. A 5-year roadmap suggests that member states should increase investments in sustainable energy, which could transform into a competitive advantage. The Council of Europe says member states should fund this new program. But for some energy experts and politicians, the pursuit of a green energy agenda is precisely what slowed Europe's industries in the first place.
When I sold my companies in 2016, a big part of my companies, I also wanted to leave Europe and move to the United States, but my wife didn't want to do that. But we are really destroying our economy. If you want to have prosperity, you need energy. And we cannot generate energy with wind turbines and solar panels. Just a little, but it's just a little.
Alarming signs point to the decline of the EU economy. The European Commission's Financial Services Department stated in November 2024 that capital market integration is regressing across the continent. Some industry leaders urged the EU to adopt a capital market model more similar to that of the United States.
A stunning statistic is in the last 20 years ago, the EU and the US were about broadly equal economically, GDP per head. Now the USA is 50% higher than the EU. So what's happening? You've got here in Brussels a red tape factory that Elon Musk could have a lot of fun with, because it is generating too much red tape, too much regulation, it's costing too much, it's destroying jobs, it's holding the economy back.
German firms committed $15.7 billion to U.S. projects in 2023, marking a significant increase from $8.2 billion in 2022. David Vives, NTD News, Brussels.
Fast in fashion and on its feet, retailer H&M is working to secure suppliers closer to its key markets. This is in part to prepare for possible tariff hikes in the U.S. Finance Chief Adam Carlson noted several reasons for the push toward a more regionalized supply chain, including potential tariffs. Carlson said the company drew up scenarios for such trade barriers and called them a concern. H&M is exploring options to source more products from Central America for its markets in the U.S. and Brazil. As for Europe, it is sourcing more from Turkey and looking to build its supplier base in Morocco and Egypt. Now, the U.S. economy is showing resiliency in 2024. The Commerce Department reports the economy expanded 2.3% during the fourth quarter compared to the year before. And the data is based on gross domestic product measurements. Analysts say strong consumer spending and a healthy labor market helped fuel the growth. Many economists expect the U.S. economy to continue to flourish this year. This GDP report comes just one day after the Federal Reserve decided to keep its key interest rate steady. Now, check your freezers, everyone. Some Wegmans chicken nuggets may be contaminated with bone fragments. That's according to the Department of Agriculture. The USDA put a Wegmans 46-ounce bags of frozen fully cooked breaded chicken nuggets under a public health alert. This particular batch has a best if used by date of August 26, 2025, which is located on the back of the packaging next to the barcode in the lower right corner. Customers who have the product at home have been asked to throw it away or return to the store for a refund. There have been no confirmed reports of injuries. The chicken nuggets were produced solely for Wegmans food markets. You can see a list of states where the nuggets were distributed at fsis.usda.gov. And Super Bowl tailgaters, there's a major recall concerning a brand of folding chairs. Nearly 23,000 AMX Global Portable Folding Stadium seats have been recalled due to safety risks. The seats have bleacher security hooks that can crack or break. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says the product was sold under the BJ's Wholesale or Black Sierra brand. There have been 5 reports of the hooks breaking, leading to 2 falls and 1 injury. The seats were available for purchase from July 2022 through January 2024. Customers should destroy the product by cutting through the fabric of the seat, then take a photo and send it to support@stadiumseatrecall.com for a full refund. First-time filings for unemployment benefits fell by 16,000 claims last week. The level of jobless claims remains low, indicating there's some stability in the labor market. Economists have attributed the pullback in job growth largely to employers holding back on hiring rather than doing mass layoffs. But that means it's taking longer for unemployed people to find work. Continuing claims, which are filed by people who have received jobless benefits for at least a week, have been hovering around 3-year highs. Even so, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said Wednesday the labor market remains solid. Meanwhile, concern is rising as China's push for AI dominance continues. This after a data leak is discovered in the DeepSeek AI model, and several countries are already investigating how it uses personal data. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
DeepSeek, China's answer to AI chatbot dominance, wasn't out long before a U.S. cloud data security company discovered a significant leak of sensitive information. And data authorities in several countries are already investigating how DeepSeek uses personal data. People want answers about the security of user data, including children's data.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call.
Cloud security platform Wiz described in a blog post how their research uncovered a DeepSeek database that exposed sensitive information. The publicly accessible database allowed full control over its operations. Wiz says this exposed over 1 million lines of long streams that included sensitive information like chat history, backend data, API secrets, and operational details. The Wiz research team quickly informed DeepSeek, which promptly secured the exposure. Data leaks aren't the only problem with Chinese mainland AI chatbots. Getting correct historical facts on sensitive subjects is not something the Chinese Communist Party is willing to let Chinese companies release to the public. Stanford University research scholar Charles Mock doesn't think the Chinese Communist Party's regulation of information is a sustainable business practice.
So I would say that probably the other biggest problem that Chinese companies will face is still about the content control and regulation from the government would in some ways tie their hands, if not in the initial development of the system, but in the full deployment for services in future. There's still a question mark about how much the Chinese government would want to allow that to happen, even within their domestic market.
The DeepSeek app could not be accessed in Apple or Google app stores in Italy on Wednesday, the day after the country's Data Protection Authority requested information on its use of personal data. Ireland's Data Protection Commission says it also requested information from DeepSeek about how it processes the data of Irish users. CNBC reported that the U.S. Navy has banned usage of DeepSeek through an email, warning shipmates not to use the program in any capacity, citing potential security and ethical concerns. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Chili's is pulling off one of the biggest turnarounds in recent restaurant history. Chili's restaurants opened for at least a year increased sales more than 30% last quarter. It's the company's third straight quarter of double-digit sales growth. Chili's success has been fueled by its fast food-like deals and $6 margaritas, as well as viral social media videos, which have drawn younger customers to its doors. Chili's reported foot traffic increased 20% last quarter. And teens in the U.S. admit to being increasingly misled by fake content online. That's according to a new study by advocacy group Common Sense Media. They asked 1,000 teenagers about their experiences with media made by generative AI tools. About 35% reported being deceived by fake online content. More than 40% reported they had encountered content that was real yet misleading. And more than 20% said they had shared information that turned out to be fake. In addition, nearly half of the teens said they don't trust big tech, including Google, Meta, TikTok, Apple, and Microsoft, to make responsible decisions about how they use AI. And apparently somebody forgot to tell the Super Bowl network TV ad rates are down. So now if you want 30 seconds during the big game, get ready to shell out big bucks, and that's around $8 million. Not only that, a record, it eclipsed the already record $7 million rate Fox originally set. But as the game gets closer, demand is exceeding available time, and the rate has skyrocketed. So who's got the budget for that kind of advertising, right? But there will surely be some surprises. But for now, we know some of the usual suspects like Pepsi and Anheuser-Busch InBev will be advertising. State Farm, though, pulled its commercials out due to the California wildfires. The Super Bowl airs on Fox February 9th. The Federal Reserve yesterday hit pause on interest rate cuts. This is the agency's first key decision in President Trump's second term. Here's a look at what it means for borrowers now and going forward.
The Federal Reserve holding its benchmark rate steady amid lingering concerns about inflation.
In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged.
The slow and steady approach at odds with President Donald Trump's wishes, saying last week he wants the Fed to move swiftly.
I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world.
But U.S. inflation is still above the Fed's target rate of 2%. With the labor market sturdy and consumers still spending, Greg McBride, chief financial analyst for Bankrate, says the independent Fed doesn't see economic urgency for lower rates.
The economy, from a growth perspective, has continued to surprise to the upside. So there's nothing in the economy that's necessarily compelling the Fed to reduce interest rates or reduce them at a rapid clip.
Amid talk of Trump's tariff proposals that could lead to higher prices and immigration policy reforms that could upend the labor market, McBride says the central bank will continue to make decisions driven by data, not speculation. And borrowers looking for more relief on interest payments will have to wait.
Interest rates are not going to come down fast enough or soon enough to really ease the burden in a meaningful way. If you're carrying high-cost debt like credit cards or even home equity lines of credit, many of which are in double-digit interest rate territory, you need to stay on offense, be aggressive about paying down that debt, because you can't sit back and wait for lower interest rates to come along.
And let's talk markets before we go here. U.S. stocks ended higher today, and this is as investors digesting a stack of key earnings reports, as well with upbeat comments from Tesla helping to offset a disappointing forecast from Microsoft. Now, indexes briefly lost ground late in the session after U.S. President Donald Trump repeated that the United States will impose a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada. Meanwhile, Tesla shares were among the biggest boosts to the S&P 500. CEO Elon Musk vowed to launch a long-awaited cheaper model in the first half of 2025 and start testing the autonomous ride-hailing service in June. So the comments overshadowed its quarterly results that fell short of expectations. And that's all today on Business Matters.